Somewhere along your journey of awakening, it happened. After that crucial spiritual insight, that moment when everything shifted, you felt something change inside. You saw through the illusion, recognized the patterns, transcended the noise, and then silence fell within you. At first, it felt powerful, even liberating, but slowly, gradually, that sense of meaning began to fade. Not dramatically, not overnight, but quietly, like a tide slowly receding from shore. You stopped chasing, you stopped caring. Not in a reckless way, but in that quiet, existential sigh kind of way. And that's when the question started whispering louder in your mind. Why do I feel so numb now that I finally see the truth? There's a strange paradox here that few spiritual teachers acknowledge. We expect awakening to ignite our passion for life. But for so many of us, especially the deeply introspective types, the empaths, the seekers, it does the opposite. It empties us. This is the awakening paradox that Carl Jung understood deeply, yet most spiritual teachers conveniently skip over. The Swiss psychologist saw what happens when we pierce the veil, not just the initial happiness, but the devastating emptiness that follows. I witnessed this firsthand with a close friend. Brilliant, sensitive, deeply devoted to spiritual growth. She'd immersed herself in all the right books, Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, Krishnamurti. Then she experienced a massive awakening after her own dark night of the soul. She got it. She told me she could see through the illusion of identity, ego, and the endless chase for external success. Yet 2 months later, I found her staring at her ceiling, barely able to get out of bed. I used to cry over not achieving enough, she confessed. Now I don't care whether I do anything at all. I thought this awakening would give me energy, not leave me like this. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, hinted at this post-awakening numbness years ago. He didn't speak in trendy spiritual terms, but he deeply understood what happens when the unconscious becomes conscious. Jung said, "Enlightenment doesn't come by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That sounds beautiful until you realize what it truly means. Awakening isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of a psychological death, the death of who you thought you were. The structures that gave your life meaning, goals, careers, relationships, even your sense of time, all collapse. But here's the catch. Jung would point out that your ego isn't gone. It's confused, it lost its map, and without a new map, motivation disappears. You're not broken, you're not failing, you're in the middle of a natural process that happens when your old self begins to fall away, but your new self hasn't fully formed yet. So, what is actually happening inside your psyche when motivation disappears after awakening? Jung would tell you something profound is unfolding beneath the surface. Before awakening, your entire motivation system ran on a specific fuel: ego identification. Every goal, every drive, every ambition was powered by the narrative of who you thought you were. The praise you'd receive, the status you'd gain, the proof of your worth, all of it mattered intensely because it validated your persona, what Jung called the mask we wear for the world. Then awakening stripped that mask away. In that moment of clarity, you saw through the elaborate theater of identity. You glimpsed something larger, something that transcends your personal story. And in that glimpse, the ego, your familiar self, suffered a mortal wound. This is precisely why motivation collapses. The engine still runs, but the fuel it required, ego identification, has evaporated. Your psyche literally cannot generate motivation the same way anymore. It's not laziness, it's not depression, it's a system reboot at the deepest level. Jung recognized this phenomenon decades before it became a common spiritual experience. He wrote about how consciousness expansion inevitably leads to this crisis point. Your old self is dying, but your new self hasn't fully formed. You're caught in psychological limbo, what Jung called the night sea journey, where meaning itself seems to dissolve. What makes this particularly painful is that our society has no framework for this experience. While indigenous cultures had rites of passage and ceremonial support for ego death, our modern world pathologizes it. We're told to snap out of it or get medicated, as if the soul's deepest transformation is a disorder to be fixed rather than a metamorphosis to be honored. This is why you feel so alone in your unmotivated state. You're not just questioning your goals, you're questioning the very nature of having goals. The very structure of desire itself has been disrupted. This emptiness you're experiencing, Jung would call it sacred. Not pleasant, not comfortable, but absolutely necessary for authentic transformation. Jung introduced a critical concept most spiritual teachers ignore: enantiodromia, the principle that anything pushed to its extreme eventually transforms into its opposite. When consciousness expands too quickly, when the ego is overwhelmed by spiritual insight, the psyche naturally swings into emptiness as a compensatory mechanism. This is why, after awakening, your thoughts go from "I must do everything" to "why do anything at all?" It's not a failure of your awakening, it's your psyche creating balance. Jung compared this phase to the alchemical nigredo, the blackening, the decomposition of the old self that must precede the creation of gold. Or in modern terms, you're in the cocoon phase, neither caterpillar nor butterfly, but the mysterious transformative soup in between. Society glorifies both the caterpillar's ambition and the butterfly's freedom, but nobody celebrates the goo. Yet without fully surrendering to this formless state, no real transformation is possible. This void isn't empty, it's pregnant with potential. But it requires something from you that runs counter to everything modern culture teaches. Surrender to not knowing, complete acceptance of the pause, allowing motivation to die so that something more authentic can be born. When you resist this void, trying to force motivation, beating yourself up for lacking drive, you actually extend your stay in limbo. The more you fight against this natural phase, the longer it persists. This is why Jung emphasized that the path isn't about escaping darkness, but moving through it consciously. In psychological terms, you're experiencing the endinf of ego cathexis. The emotional energy invested in your former identity is being withdrawn, creating a necessary vacuum. This feels like motivation loss, but it's actually energy redistribution at the soul level. Here's where Jung would radically differ from most modern spiritual teachers. He wouldn't tell you to raise your vibration or just choose happiness. He would direct you toward the shadow, all the repressed, rejected aspects of yourself that awakening has now made accessible. Before we continue this journey together, if you're finding value in these deeper perspectives on the awakening process, consider subscribing to this channel. We're committed to exploring the psychological depths that most spiritual content skims over, providing real guidance for those walking this complex path. Your subscription helps this work reach others who might be silently struggling with their own awakening journey. Now, back to Jung's crucial insight. Your lost motivation isn't just about ego death. It's about energy trapped in the shadow. All the parts of yourself you've denied, suppressed, or neglected throughout your life now demand integration. The psychological energy that once powered your goals is now being redirected to this inner work. Jung recognized that awakening doesn't just reveal universal truth, it reveals your personal unconscious in all its complexity. Suddenly, you're faced with your anger, your selfishness, your fear, your desire, your ambition, your neediness, all the unspiritual qualities you've tried to ignore. And this confrontation is exhausting. It drains motivation because shadow integration requires enormous psychic energy. You can't generate outward momentum when this much inner reorganization is happening. Most people try to bypass this phase. They push for positivity, for clarity, for renewed purpose, all while ignoring the shadow material awakening has brought to the surface. This creates what Jung called a regressive restoration of the persona. You adopt spiritual bypassing as a new mask, further disconnecting from authentic energy. True motivation, the kind that survives awakening, can only emerge through shadow work. By acknowledging, accepting, and integrating the disowned parts of yourself, you reclaim the energy that's been locked in suppression. This isn't quick or comfortable work, but it's how stagnation finally breaks. Jung believed that shadow integration doesn't make you less spiritual, it makes you whole. It allows all your human drives, desires, and emotions to exist within a larger consciousness, rather than being split off and denied. This is why many awakened people who've lost motivation feel like they're going backward, experiencing emotions and impulses they thought they'd surpassed. But Jung would see this as progress, the retrieval of your complete humanity from the shadow. After the void, after the shadow work, comes what Jung considered life's ultimate purpose: individuation. Not enlightenment as an escape from yourself, but the integration of all aspects of yourself into a dynamic, conscious whole. Individuation is Jung's term for becoming psychologically whole, allowing your true, unique self to emerge beyond the social conditioning and spiritual bypassing. It's the process through which authentic motivation eventually returns. The key difference. Pre-awakening motivation came from outside in: social approval, cultural definitions of success, the ego's need for validation. Post-individuation motivation flows inside out, the expression of your unique essence, your soul's natural impulses, the self's desire to create and contribute. Jung observed that individuated motivation has a different quality entirely. It doesn't feel like striving or forcing. It feels like allowing something to move through you, what he called following the soul's archetypes. Your actions gain a sense of inevitability, as if you're fulfilling something you were always meant to do. This is why awakened individuals who've completed the void phase often shift careers, relationships, and life directions entirely. They're no longer motivated by external metrics of success, but by inner resonance, what Jung called the symbolic life. Practical signs that individuation is happening. Synchronicities increase, dreams become vivid and meaningful. You feel drawn to create or serve in specific ways that surprise you. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start noticing what naturally wants to appear through you. Jung gave us specific practices to navigate this transition: active imagination, dialoguing with your unconscious, dream analysis, recognizing the symbolic guidance from your deeper self, and creative expression, allowing the unconscious to speak through art, writing, movement. Through these practices, motivation gradually returns, not as the frantic energy of the ego, but as the steady current of the self. Jung's term for the totality of who you are, beyond ego. This motivation doesn't burn out, because it's not fighting against your true nature. It's the natural expression of it. The individuated person might appear less ambitious by conventional standards, but they're actually more effective. They waste no energy on internal conflict. Every action aligns with their deepest truth. They create, build, and serve, not to prove anything, but because their unique essence demands expression. As Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This becoming is what awaits on the other side of your motivation crisis. So what does life actually look like when you've moved through the void and into authentic being? It's subtler than most spiritual marketing would have you believe. You won't constantly feel blissed out or always motivated. You'll still experience the full range of human emotions and energy fluctuations. But there's a profound difference. You'll no longer be at war with those fluctuations. Instead of fighting against low energy periods, you'll recognize them as necessary integration phases. Instead of forcing motivation, you'll trust the natural rhythm of action and rest. Jung understood that the awakened life isn't about transcending humanity, but embracing it fully, consciously. Your motivation becomes organic rather than compulsive. You create because creation wants to happen through you. You serve because service brings you alive. You build because building expresses something essential about your unique place in the world. This state isn't static. It's dynamic participation with life itself. Some days you'll feel intense drive, others you'll need stillness. But unlike before, neither state will define your worth or trigger existential panic. You'll recognize that the universe moves through phases: creation and dissolution, manifestation and reabsorption, and so do you. You'll stop expecting perpetual motivation and start trusting the deeper intelligence of your own rhythms. The individuated person, in Jung's understanding, doesn't need external validation to stay motivated. They've found what he called the inner gold, the intrinsic value of being exactly who they are, contributing exactly what only they can contribute. So if you're in that void right now, that strange, unmotivated limbo after awakening, know that you're not regressing. You're not failing. You're not doing spirituality wrong. You're experiencing a necessary phase that few have the courage to enter. The motivation you lost wasn't really yours to begin with. It was conditioned, reactive, based on proving your worth. The motivation that awaits you on the other side of this void, it belongs to your essence. It's the universe moving through you, unobstructed by fear or false identity. Jung would tell you, trust this process. The death of false motivation is the prerequisite for authentic purpose. The emptiness you feel now is creating space for something real to emerge. Not another spiritual achievement, but the simple, profound expression of your unique being in service to life itself. This isn't the end of your awakening journey. It's the beginning of truly living it.